I request my friend Dr. Satak to come and moderate the session, and the MC will introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Yes, I would request Dr. Anil Ramachandran to please stay back, because this session also we need him. Thank you, sir. And I would also like to call upon Mr. Nikhil Laite, sports physiotherapist. So please join us, sir. Followed by, I would like to invite Mr. Joel Sundaram, road cyclist, gold medal national championship 23 ITT, gold medal national games 22 ITT, schooling Hebron School Ooty, sound engineer. I would like to call Mr. Joel Sundaram onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand of applause and welcome him. I'd also like to invite Dr. Shweta Sri Mohanta, MD Sports Medicine, Best Paper Award, Sports Con 2022 by PGIMS Rohtak, ringside doctor, first Kalo India Women's Hockey League. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Shweta Sri Mohanta. Thank you so much. Followed by, I would like to invite Ms. Satvika Srinivas, co-founder and chief nutritionist, Live Stark Health and Performance Private Limited, Masters in Clinical Nutrition, FoodMap Dietitian, Sports Nutritionist, Certified Diabetes Educator. Ma'am, we'll invite you onto the stage, Ms. Satvika Srinivas. Thank you so much. Now we'll move on to the session. Yes, sir.
So welcome everyone, and my dear delegates, good evening. So now we are speaking on endurance. You know, endurance is quite a common term we've been listening regularly nowadays. And what is it basically, and what is it, and how is it different, and how it is different from strength, or what exactly it is? Endurance test, yo-yo test, all those tests to listen. So endurance is the many terminologies such as endurance per se itself, aerobic, anaerobic, lactate thresholds, and the zone of training. To start with,
I think I grew up for years like not
so this
really
is what an
knowing
endurance,
how to express myself.
You know, any sports
like
person goes to this phase
between, I guess, the
when
person
he
that I
or she
thought I
feels
was.
neglected, or he or she feels slow.
And that led to a lot of really dark moments in my life. Dealing with depression and dealing with anxiety growing up, I learnt to lean on that stronger side of myself.
So it's not only physical.
I learnt to push myself physically,
the mental thing too plays a role.
Express myself creatively, and those two things were kind of my way of connecting with the person that I thought I actually was.
His mind, his body, he fights with his family, and then comes his sports, then other sports individual. So with lot of perseverance and hard work,
it's just me and the road.
Lot of
me
exercises,
on pavement and
loneliness.
It's just me and I guess the pain. That pain puts me in a place where I completely lose sensation with everything else. All I have to do is put one foot in front of the other or keep moving forward, and I think that is a special place that I have really needed many times in my life.
So it's basically the continuous and regular hard work. So now what is aerobic? Now this is the aerobic endurance. So what do you understand in aerobic endurance?
Cardio-respiratory endurance. Either term could be used in your external assessment, and the examiner will be looking for the same answer.
Cardiorespiratory, which we all do.
Aerobic endurance is the ability of the cardiorespiratory system to work efficiently, supplying nutrients and oxygen to the working muscles during sustained physical activity. The cardiorespiratory system is made up of the cardiovascular system, which is the heart, the blood and the blood vessels, and the respiratory system, which is your lungs and airway.
And the lung airway.
The cardiorespiratory system is responsible for the uptake of the oxygen that we breathe in, the transport of nutrients and oxygen around the body, and the removal of waste products such as carbon dioxide. Aerobic endurance is important for any sport and activity over a prolonged period of time. Therefore, in long distance running, cycling and triathlons, aerobic endurance is one of the most important components of fitness for that athlete. This is because it allows them to meet the physical demands of their sport. For example, where they will be required to run up and down the pitch countless times during a match. Aerobic endurance has
Then we have the
cardiorespiratory endurance.
Then we have the anaerobic endurance. So this is basically a mixture of high thirst and energy when you do multiple exercises in a very minimal of time without losing much of oxygen from your body. Then what is lactate threshold?
Have you ever reached a point in your runs when your body feels like it just can't move forward? You may be witnessing a lactate threshold. So what exactly is lactate threshold? Lactate is a compound produced in your body during exercise. Under normal circumstances, your body clears the lactate faster than it is produced. When you run at higher intensities for long periods of time, the lactate begins to accumulate in the blood. The point at which your body produces lactate faster than it can clear is called the lactate threshold. At this point of excess blood lactate, you may experience hitting the wall, a condition that forces you to slow down or stop your activity. With consistent training, you may be able to improve your lactate threshold. This means that you may also be able to run longer at higher intensities.
So it's a point during exhaustive all-out exercise at which lactate builds in the bloodstream, and for a well-trained runner this usually occurs when they are at about 90% of the maximum heart rate corresponding to the pace somewhere between 10k and the half marathon race pace. Thank you everyone. Now I request Mr. John. No need. Yeah. Sweta. Okay, now I request Sweta to please come.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ortho-One. Thank you, Sports Science India, for this opportunity. So this is the basics. We'll just touch upon this. Let's start. What is the science behind the sport? Each sport has its own science. What is the exercise physiology behind it? How to check for your own body fat? How to check for your strength? How to check whether your aerobic and anaerobic fitness is good? How good is your reaction time and how good is your aerobic fitness? This is what you are going to learn in the next few videos after this. So, basics of exercise physiology. Now, exercise physiology, it is the study of how your body adapts to your training, physical activity or exercise. Now, what all adapts? Your heart and your lungs, your neuromuscular, nerves, muscles, and then how do you test for it? You test for oxygen consumption, heart rate variability, your muscle function, your energy expenditure, and hormonal responses. All of this will be touched by my co-presenters. Now coming to sports physiology, it is a specialized branch under exercise physiology which optimizes athletes' performance. What is special in this? Biomechanics and nutrition and recovery strategies. Other things are similar to what is being seen in exercise physiology, which is again your heart, lungs, muscles. Coming to energy systems. In this game, as we see, can you see that jump, that sprint? Which is the energy system which is being used? That is the ATP phosphocreatine system, which usually uses in explosive sports like jumps. Then slowly your energy, this is for the first 15 seconds. Then in the next 60 seconds, the glycolysis system comes in, which is for your 400-meter races. And finally, the endurance, that is the oxidative or the aerobic fitness comes in. Let's talk about the principles in exercise physiology for training. The first is overload. The second thing is specificity for that sport. Third thing you should know is individual differences. And fourth thing is the reversibility principle. Overload. When you give your body some stress, your body will adapt to it. But there is a very thin line. The load that you give has to be very progressive. There's a very thin line between overtraining, overloading. Second principle is the principle of specificity, that you have to train specific to the goals that you want to achieve. It is specific to your own sport. How can you train specific? By specific sports movement, specific energy system training, specific skill development, and specific muscle group training. But then you should never compare yourself to your colleagues, because there are individual differences because of your genetics, physiology, biomechanics, psychology, and previous training experiences. All of this together then translates into your performance. Then comes the principle of reversibility. That states that if even 5 days of inactivity causes muscles to lose elasticity and aerobic capacity, will decay by 5%. Approximately 10% strength is lost after 8 weeks. Ideally, the first to go is power. So loss of physiological and performance adaptation is detraining. So no matter how hard you have trained, if you don't train, your changes are always transient and reversible. Therefore, if you can't maintain a volume, maintain that intensity. How training impacts the aerobic system and the anaerobic system, that is what we are going to learn next. So I would like to invite my next speaker to continue the talk about this. Thank you.
So now I'd like to call upon Mr. Nikhil Latte.
Hi, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so we are going to look at, okay, colors changed. We're going to look at what the VO2 test is all about. VO2 stands for volume of oxygen. And what that basically means is how much oxygen is your body able to consume. Now, one quick question. What is the difference between a car which has got a 800cc engine versus a car which has got a 2000cc engine? Okay? The bigger the engine, the more fuel the car can burn and produce a greater performance. The other way to say it is, the bigger the car engine, the more fuel it is able to burn using more oxygen to produce performance. Now in the human body, I can't really go into every single muscle, do a biopsy, figure out what fuel is being used and at what intensity. But I can definitely measure the oxygen going in and out. So if 3 units of oxygen goes in and 2 units comes out, that means the rest has been used by the body. And the bigger the size of your engine, the more oxygen it can use. Easy? Simple? All right. So how do you measure this? Now, there are many ways in which you can do this. A lot of wearables nowadays, Garmin watches, they sort of tell you what your VO2 is. And it is for this reason VO2 is considered gold standard as well for fitness, because, in order to have a very high oxygen uptake, your entire system from your lungs to your heart to your blood vessels to your muscles have to be really, really good in order to get that oxygen in. So if you have a very high VO2, you're fit. So that's the gold standard. So can we go to the previous slide, please? Yeah. So what happens is Garmin and other such watches, they know your height, weight, sex, heart rate, speed of running, and they are able to calculate what your VO2 is. So it's not an accurate measure. In fact, in my lab, when I test, I find a difference of almost 10 units, 10 mils per kg per minute of difference between what the watch says and what your actual VO2 is. But for an apple-to-apple comparison, say you started running and your VO2 was X, and after 3 months the VO2 has gone up. It may or may not have actually gone up, but you have got fitter. So that's a decent measure for you to know whether you are improving. But not very accurate. The second is to do field tests like beep test or yo-yo test. So if you take 1,000 people, you make them do the beep test, and you take the same 1,000 people, do a proper VO2 test, and you'll be able to figure out, okay, if you're reaching this level of a beep test, your VO2 is so much. And based on that data, you make normative tables. So next time the 1,001 person does the beep test and they reach a level, you can say, okay, the VO2 must be so and so. So at the moment, the normative data for the beep test is a bit more solid than for the yo-yo test in terms of testing across the world, across age categories, across gender. But yo-yo is getting there. So very robust data for both the tests, normative data for you to do this test and figure out what your VO2 levels are. The gold standard remains breath-by-breath gas analysis, where you basically put someone on a treadmill or a cycle with a gas mask, which is collecting all the oxygen going in and going out, measuring it, sampling it, and you basically make sure that the person keeps going until they almost fall. So one of the great things about exercise physiology is you're legally allowed to torture athletes. Yeah? And we basically push them till the point where they break. And that's when we say, okay, you've reached your maximum. Next, please. So what the VO2 allows you to do it, if you do a proper test, and the test should last more than 10 minutes, less than 15 minutes, it allows you to see what fuel is being used at what intensity, at what heart rate, and at what speed. So based on this kind of data, I am actually able to tell athletes that, are you using your aerobic system well? Are you using your anaerobic system well? Where are you falling short? And that is what allows me to give actual action points that the coach and athletes can use in their training tomorrow. Next, please. Next. So this is just the screens of what it looks like when you're doing the test. Now, this is a report of someone who's got a very good aerobic capacity. I'm just going to point it out for you guys. Yeah, so the VT1 is your aerobic threshold. VT2 is your anaerobic. Thank you. So VT1 is your aerobic threshold. VT2 is anaerobic. And this is the maximum VO2 that they were able to achieve on the day of the test. Now, this is a cyclist, and he had a very good aerobic capacity. And at his maximum, he was able to reach something like 66 ml per kg per minute of oxygen consumption. In comparison, our top badminton athletes, men reach about 60, women reach about 55. Wrestling, men reach about 55, women reach about 48 or 50. Amateur runners, even very good marathon runners, people who even qualify for Boston, they are somewhere between 35 and 40 for women, and 40 and 45 for men. So you can see that 66 is a very high number for cyclists, but it's not high enough. So when I did the test for this person, and this was a 19-year-old who had come to my lab, and the parents had a simple question: should we invest in him? Is it good enough for us to invest in him and turn him into a professional? And my answer was, this can probably help you, do very well in India, maybe even reach international level in India, but he probably won't make a club side in Belgium, right? So numbers matter. There's a limit. I mean, no matter amount of will or training can go past what your actual, top end of your capacity is. And he was 19, he was past his growth spurt. So this is where he was at. Today he's among the top 5 road cyclists in India, which is great. Next, please. Now, this is an amateur athlete who's just getting into running, who's really not that good. So what happens is, most of our activities, if you see what we've been doing today, we've either been sitting, walking, or, I had to catch a flight in the morning, I had to run. Very short distance, but I had to run. So you're basically either in your low aerobic zone, or you're, in your high anaerobic zone. There's nothing in between. So what happens for most people is your aerobic capacity tanks. Your anaerobic is still okay-ish, not that great, but aerobic capacity tanks, because in order to have a good aerobic capacity, you need a lot of infrastructure in place, like mitochondria and blood supply and enzymes, etc., etc. So in this person, you can see that they were able to reach their aerobic capacity, aerobic limit at 5.5 kilometers per hour. but they were able to reach their maximum limit at around 11 kilometers per hour. And the speed on the treadmill was going up by half a kilometer a minute. So, and they started at 4.5. So within a couple of minutes of them starting their test on the treadmill, they breezed past their aerobic capacity. And then they were in their anaerobic zone for about 7 minutes until they finally exhausted and had to stop. This is what you see in very early people who have just taken up running, just taken up aerobic exercises, because the system has not developed yet. In about 2 months' time, I would see much better results. Next, please. Now, last example. This is a badminton player, and her coach came to me with a simple problem, saying that in a long rally, she seems to be tired, but as soon as the rally ends, if I go and talk to her, she's not even breathless. So what's happening? Why is she not looking tired during the rally? So we did the test, and what we found was that, look at where her aerobic capacity comes at 11.6 kilometers per hour. Her anaerobic is 13.7, and she finishes at 15.5. So she has a very good aerobic capacity, considering she started on the treadmill at 6.5 kilometers per hour. So it took her almost 9 minutes to reach her aerobic limit, another 2 minutes to go past her anaerobic limit, and another 2 minutes before she stopped. So what that means is she's got very, very good aerobic capacity, very poor anaerobic capacity, and that comes down to training, where during training she was doing more long runs rather than multi-feed or drills or on-court stuff. Because of that, during the rally, when she's moving at a high speed and her anaerobic system needs to work, it wasn't. But after the shuttle falls on the ground, the aerobic system was good enough to quickly recover her breath. So again, in this case, you're able to tell the coach, tell the athlete that probably some tweaks to your training are required in order to optimize your energy system for your chosen sport. Next, please. That's it. Thank you. That's me again.
Nikhil, you continue with the high altitude.
That's me again. Okay. Next, please. So before we talk about high altitude training, let's understand what high altitude is. Generally, high altitude is considered an altitude of above 10,000 feet. In sports, you usually train between 6,000 to 8,000 feet for improvements, for physiological changes that you want to happen because of high altitude training. Now, as the altitude goes up, the concentration of oxygen in air comes down, oxygen being a heavy gas. So you now are left with a situation where your body demands oxygen, but there is less of it available. So your body starts compensating. It increases the number of red blood cells. It makes sure that your breathing is slower and deeper. So every single breath, you're taking deeper breaths, and your blood has more red blood cells in it, so that whatever little oxygen is there in the air, it can be carried by blood to your working muscles. So that is the idea behind high altitude training. So sports where you require a very, very good aerobic capacity, very good oxygen carrying capacity of blood, cycling, endurance running, those seem to benefit by doing altitude training. Next, please. Unfortunately, what happens is your body's adaptation is highly specific. So, for example, it was 1968 Mexico Olympics where everybody had a sudden realization how big a difference altitude can make. The Mexico City Games were held at a significant altitude, and everyone who trained at sea level and competed at altitude found the going a little hard. But everyone who trained at high altitude were able to compete really well. But the flip side is, if you train at high altitude and you compete at sea level, it doesn't seem to give you a big advantage. So high altitude training is extremely specific. I'm not really sure why our weightlifting team does high altitude training. That is still beyond my capacity to understand, but that does happen, right? Not the cycling team, the weightlifting team. trains at high altitude. So the altitude that you need to achieve to train, to get all these benefits is between 4 and 6,000 feet above sea level, right? Above 10,000 is considered high altitude for most activities, but you don't want that high in altitude. You still want to perform and train at a good level. Duration matters. So for example, this image is of a high altitude chamber. Okay, you have a chamber where the pressure can be controlled, and you can put in treadmills, you can put in weight training equipment, people can train inside. But imagine training for half an hour in the high altitude chamber and then spending 23.5 hours outside. That's not enough of a push to your body to make those changes. Remember, we are all born lazy. Your body will not spend energy unless absolutely necessary. So you have to create an environment where it becomes necessary. So if you want to train at high altitude, go to high altitude, okay? Or there is a good application of high altitude chamber at Army Sports Institute in Pune, where the cabin is so big that they have bunk beds inside. So the athletes live and train inside for 23 hours and they come out for food, just an hour a day or so. And then you can actually see benefits. But it becomes so expensive that it's just cheaper to book a hotel in Himachal and stay there and train, right? So that's the issue with high altitude training. Very, very good if you're going to compete at high altitude. Not really useful if you're going to compete at sea level. Quite expensive if you're going to do with a high altitude chamber, especially if it's big enough for you to live inside. So yeah, that's it. So specificity matters. If that is where you need to compete, if that is the kind of sport, then yeah, train in the mountains. It'll help. Thank you.
Now I'd like to call upon Joel Sundaram. So Mr. Sundaram, I would like to know what's your secret of our endurance training, and how do you cope up with being a cyclist with the various weather conditions like heat, rain, and wind?
I mean, there's no secret to being an endurance cyclist. I mean, how many of you over here own a cycle or have owned a cycle in the past? Just raise your hand. Like, almost everybody. So everybody who cycles is technically an endurance athlete, because when it comes to cycling, you're predominantly, no matter what form of cyclist you are predominantly an endurance athlete. Your main source of fuel is your fat stores on your body. And that is where, like, setting up zones specific to yourself, your heart rate zones, your power zones, all that come into play, because as an endurance athlete, you want to spend roughly between 80% to 70% of your time in your endurance zone, and the rest depending on what specifically you're doing, whether it's sprinting, time trialing, so on, you spend it in, those zones. Earlier, when you're setting up heart rate zones, there is that, the rule of 220 minus your age. I mean, I'm not a big fan of that, because that would mean that my age is 8 years old, because my max heart rate is 212. So coming up to that, it goes person to person, size of your heart, genetics, all that matter when you're setting up, heart rate zones and actually taking endurance sports seriously. You asked about weather. I live in Ooty. I train in Ooty. Ooty has some of the most unpredictable weather there is. But, there is also equipment and technology in order for us to train indoors. We have trainers. We can put our bikes on the trainers, watch a movie, watch a cricket match, and just still get the same benefit as going out and riding on the road. There isn't such a big barrier between becoming an endurance athlete per se. Like, I only took up cycling in COVID, which was 3.5 years ago. And it started out as a hobby, just to waste time, because, nobody wanted to sit inside the house for 24 hours. So just to get out, and that was the only thing you could do, go out and ride a bike. And just picking that up and then competing at small races, which then eventually became state, and then national, and then the Asian championships. So it's like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. It's not really that big a deal, but anything else?
Thank you. So I'd like to ask Coach K, like how do you train or how do you upgrade a guy from marathon to ultra marathon? Like how does he cope up with? Mike, please. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so the question is, how do I upgrade somebody from marathon to ultra marathon?
Yeah.
Okay, I think the first answer to that is a marathon runner, does he have a desire to run an ultra marathon? Because the ultra marathon it's actually one crazy, idiotic, stupid sport. Because you're going to be running for multiple hours, sometimes even multiple days. It requires extreme amount of physical and mental commitment. So in terms of training, marathon finish time is sometimes cannot be extrapolated to predict the ultra marathon finish time. Let's say if somebody has run a 4.5 hours of marathon time, it doesn't mean that maybe around 5 hours, 15 minutes, you can finish a 50-kilometer ultra marathon, because ultra marathons are usually longer. The terrain could be mountain, or if it's trail. Trail is there is no paved roads. It could be goat trail or jeep trails. It becomes much more complicated. Some of the terrains are extremely technical. That means you need to run down a mountain hill with boulders, or you need to cross river stream. So basically, it's a different sport altogether. So if somebody says that I've done a marathon, I want to go ultra marathon, the first thing I would assess is the mindset. If that is something very deeply ingrained in their goals and they want to achieve something and they want to, it means something more to them personally than just the number. Because I would even say that if somebody can run at 12 o'clock in Coimbatore, go all the way up to Pilamedu, and then come back in the evening at home and then still smile, that person has the right mindset to run an ultra marathon. Okay, so I think the mindset is the number one. Of course, in terms of the training, there is a lot of preparation. So we're going to assume that this person can run a full marathon, and then you need to scale up to run depending upon the sport. Let me take an example of Ooty Ultra, which is something that I founded. Ooty Ultra has got a 60 kilometer as a minimum distance, ultra category, and the 90 kilometers. 90 kilometers not for the beginners. We generally advise 60K. Okay, if we have done a full marathon, then you can think about running a 60 kilometer. The demands of the sport there is, first of all, distance. Second is elevation. There is going to be a lot of uphill climbing and then downhill running involved. So that means the athlete needs to train specifically for climbing uphill while running, and then not just the physical part of it, but also in terms of nutrition. Nutrition plays a critical role in ultra marathon. Most of the ultra runner can eat something in between. I jokingly said you can eat a masala dosa and then still run, right? So that's a possibility. The fueling strategy is different. A marathon runner can probably not survive eating a boiled potato during the run. But an ultra runner can eat a pizza slice and then still continue to run, because they are operating at zone 2, zone 3 kind of heart rate. They're still tapping a lot into their fat metabolism and then still continue to train. So ultra marathon training involves multiple hours of running. A runner can become better with running only by running. But of course, you also need strength and condition to protect your joint, maintain a good muscle strength, and also body composition for good appearance. A lot of running is involved, depending upon the distance, depending upon the history of this athlete. Because when I used to train for the 90-kilometer ultras, the longest distance that I've done a week is about 140 kilometers. So the multiple days of running and multiple times, sometimes you run in the morning and then do a recovery run in the evening, again sleep, get up in the morning, the next day do a back-to-back run on the same day. So it's much more complicated. There's no specific answer to this question. It depends upon the athlete, depends upon the sport, depends upon the gender, depends upon their background, where they train. Do they have access to mountains? Because I know a lot of runners who train in Chennai come and run Ooty. They think that the performance is going to be completely different. So they basically modify the race day goals. So there's no straight answer, but it depends. Okay, answer is it depends.
My question is now to Mr. Nikhil. Like, do we have any supplement to increase the VO2 max?
No.
No.
And I'll tell you one more bad news. After a certain age, you can't improve your VO2 max. So beyond a certain age, I found VO2 max is extremely intransigent. It only decreases, it doesn't go up. Okay. And for most people that age is 25.
Okay. And do yoga help? This for the yoga instructors. Do yoga help? No. Okay. Thank you. Now I call upon Ms. Sadvika Srinivas.
Okay. I am from Ooty. It is almost 7,200 meters high. So we are based in a professional football club. So we used to travel during December. Once we started going, first 15 days, very easy to run 90 minutes. But after that, we started exhausting. Then again, we have to travel back to Ooty and stay in 10 days. Then only we can adapt to the sea level. So what is the reason behind it?
So when you're in Ooty at a higher altitude, you're actually working harder, because everything from your heart rate, your depth of breathing, your blood supply, your muscles' ability to pick up that oxygen, aerobic capacity, everything is better in Ooty than at sea level. However, once you go to sea level and you start adapting to sea level, you lose that advantage. 15 days is enough. There are other things also. At sea level, you also have to think about the humidity and the sweat rates and the food and all of those things. So there are quite a few things that need to be different. Or I'm not understanding your question. That's what I'm trying to say, sir, that it may not only be about altitude. It may be with the weather, because if you go to sea level, it's going to be a lot humid, you'll sweat a lot more, dehydrate a lot more. It could be with the food, it could be with the temperature, it could be with the pollution as well, especially if you go to a big city. So there are a lot of factors that come into play which can affect your ability to breathe and ability to perform. And which is why I said that training and competing is very, very specific. So if you're going to compete at sea level, you should be training at sea level as well. And if you're going to compete at high altitude, you should train at high altitude.
Okay.
Okay, I think this is a very nice discussion. The reason is, if we go to the altitude, 30 days minimum to see benefits of the altitude training. Before that, you can't have benefits. For the erythropoietin to be secreted and RBC number to go up, it will take a period of time, depending on their age, depending on their previous training. If you are living at high altitude like him in Ooty, it is totally a different thing altogether, because this is what Kip Keino, 1968 Mexico Olympics, when he came down, for him he was at a higher altitude, at the Great Rift Valley. And he comes down to run the Mexico Olympics. He was able to perform well, very well. He was able to win the gold medal. Now, those who go up to train and live there for a period of time will lose their capacity within 15 days of coming down to their sea level for endurance activities, not for anaerobic activities. There's no point in saying anaerobic activity. That's why he said weightlifters are going towards altitude. There's no requirement. Now, the most important thing, the whole of runners from Africa come from the Great Rift Valley, 60 kilometers radius. There's nothing more. All of them live at a high altitude. Then they thought, why can't we take our Sherpas? The Sherpas are living thousands of years in the high altitude. Do you know that it didn't work? The Sherpas' hemoglobin is different because they have lived for 1,000 years. They will not get the advantage which the people who have gone there for 100 years and less. So it's so funny that the Sherpas couldn't have the advantage which the people living in Ethiopia and Kenya have at the Great Rift Valley. If you have read the book by Sports Gene, he gives you a clear idea of how they try to train these Sherpas into high altitude. அதாவது
thank you very much sir.
ஒரு உயரமான இடத்துக்கு போனா 3000 அடிக்கு மேல போனா தான் சார் உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது பெனிஃபிட். 3000 அடி கீழே இருந்தால் ஒன்றும் பெனிஃபிட் கிடையாது. சும்மா மாடி மேலே நின்று நான் ட்ரெயின் பண்ணால் கிடைக்காது. சரியா? ஊட்டிக்கு மேலே போகணும். ஊட்டி கூட கொஞ்சம் கம்மின்னு சொல்லலாம். அப்போ ஊட்டிக்கு போனோம்னா அங்கே ஆக்சிஜன் கம்மி. அதனால் நீங்கள் ட்ரெயின் பண்ணும்போது உங்கள் ஆர்பிசி ரெட் பிளட் செல் நம்பர் இன்க்ரீஸ் ஆகும். அதுக்கு எரித்ரோபாய்டின் கிட்னிலேருந்து செக்ரீட் ஆகணும். அதனால தான் டோப்பிங்கில் எரித்ரோபாய்டின் நேராக கொடுத்தேன் நான் ஆர்பிசி நம்பரை இன்க்ரீஸ் பண்ணிகிட்டு இருக்காங்க. எனக்கு கூடவே அதையும் சொல்லிட்டேன். இப்போது நீங்கள் அங்கேயே வாழ்கிறவராக இருந்தால் நீங்கள் கீழே வந்தால் கூட நிறைய நாளைக்கு பெர்ஃபார்ம் பண்ண முடியும். ஆனால் நீங்கள் இங்கேருந்து மேலே போனீங்கன்னா அங்கேருந்து கீழே வரும்போது it will be only for 15 days.
Okay, can we have the discussion later? Okay, now I call upon Ms. Satvik Srinivas.
Excuse me, Chairperson.
Sir, we are running short of time, sir.
1 minute of your question. You asked a question whether yoga can increase your vital capacity. Yes,
no,
I have to humbly submit to the August gathering. I am an MSc post-graduation in yoga also. So there are clear-cut evidences, documentary evidences that through proper breathing, sequence of breathing exercises, your vital capacity, your lung capacity to hold more maximum oxygen can be enhanced, subject to other conditions like your muscular endurance and other aspects, other parameters. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ma'am, please.
So I meant VO2 max does not increase. The vital capacity of the lung definitely increases, but not the VO2 max.
Good afternoon to everyone present here. Thank you, Ortho-One, for giving me this opportunity and having me here. Today, let's just talk about food for a little bit, since we're talking too much about training and all of the techniques that are there. So let's go somewhere near food where everyone is able to relate to what I'm also talking about and what fits in. So, when you talk about nutrition, nutrition is definitely the key to sports performance, but sometimes, most often, it is ignored. Sometimes people focus on their training, they focus on their hydration, they focus on their techniques, they focus on their biochemical parameters, but then when it comes to their diet, it's all little haphazard and people forget what to do where, or they are not aware of what to do when. So fueling for performance, there is no substitute or a supplement than a well-balanced diet. And I want to emphasize on this to the maximum because I follow the food first approach where if they are not meeting the nutrient requirements without food, I am not going to prescribe a supplement. So the first thing that they have to do is if there is a protein requirement of 80 grams, you are going to try to meet that 80 grams towards food. I am not going to make it easier for the athlete by bringing in a supplement in unless if there is any kind of difficulty that is there with achieving the nutrient goal. So good nutrition is key for overall health and performance. Improved recovery, yes, you need a lot of micronutrients and macronutrients to bring about your recovery, and it also prevents early fatigue because you are loading up on the important nutrients and you are also training your gut. Training your gut with the appropriate nutrients, the right amount of fluid in the right time, that is very, very important, and you are also preventing any potential injury and you are achieving the best results. So in this pace, nutrition is a very important aspect. And just like your training needs some periodization, your nutrition also needs some periodization. So it is divided into once an athlete comes to us, we divide him according to him or her according to the phases that are there. So we have the preparation phase, which takes about 4 weeks. Here the nutrient aims would be for recovery, improving the body composition, working on the hydration strategies for the athlete. And then when we go to the specific preparation phase, which is lasting about 6 weeks, here we are going to focus on any changes in the energy and nutrient intake. So if they have to take a little bit more or a little bit less depending upon their body composition, we're also going to work on the recovery. Here we're also going to practice specific race diets. If they're a cyclist or a marathon runner, if there is any specific race diet that they have to take, we introduce it in this phase and also work on the supplement strategy. So in the first phase, we don't even talk about the supplements. And then we have the pre-competition phase, which lasts about 2 to 4 weeks, where we try to avoid any weight gain. So for endurance athletes, and during this phase, we try to avoid any weight gain, and we practice all the nutrition and the supplement strategies for the race. So now it's going to be directly focused on the race. And in the final week, we stick to easy runs and a lot of rest, and support any race-building glycogen stores and hydration. Hydration is a very important aspect of this phase, and we also try to prevent any muscle loss. So every athlete has unique energy needs and goals, so no one diet plan is going to work for everyone, so each one has to focus on an individualized plan. You cannot use the same, even if they are both of the same sport, even if they are of the same gender, similar age, you cannot use the same diet plan for anyone else, because each body is different and responds differently. So endurance athletes, first let's talk about carbohydrates, which is the most important nutrient for them, because they rely mostly on their carbohydrates for the long-term energy. So proper carbohydrate intake before, during, and after your endurance events can help to improve your performance and enhance the recovery. And carbohydrates also provide energy for quick bursts of energy, such as sprinting. So type of carbohydrates that you have to choose is choose minimally processed grains such as pasta or rice, fruit, whole grams, corn, and peas. These are all sources of complex carbohydrates, and dairy and starchy vegetables such as potato. So before your run or before your activity, go for a low glycemic index meal, which is very important, because a high glycemic index meal can give you a lot of hyperinsulinemia, meaning a lot of insulin going around in your body, and subsequent hypoglycemia. So this can completely bring your blood sugars down, which is going to be really harmful for the athlete. And this also suppresses the use of fat as the source of energy or as the fuel. So go for a low glycemic index meal. And you also need to go on something that is very low in fiber and it is easy to digest, because before your race, if you take a meal that is very high in fiber, it is going to cause a lot of gut distress or some kind of nausea or abdominal pain, which is going to bring down your performance. So go for something like broken wheat porridge, which is dalia. You can go for a dalia porridge, or you can go for cereals with milk. You can go for a fruit smoothie, anything like that. And then protein. Protein is important to repair muscles that have been damaged during exercise and to build your lean body mass. So getting enough protein and the timing of the protein intake is very important. So immediately after your exercise or your workout, it is very important that you take at least 1 to 2 grams of carbohydrate per kg body weight, and you are also getting a minimum of 20 to 25 grams of protein, because that's when your muscle protein synthesis is activated. If you are delaying this meal or you are putting it away, then you are not going to replenish your glycogen stores, and you are also not going to aid with the muscle protein synthesis, which is important for you to continue. So fish, chicken, and turkey, lean meats, dairy and legumes and pulses, soy and eggs. Do not always focus on the non-vegetarian protein sources. So vegetarian protein source is going to give you protein plus fiber, but a non-vegetarian protein source is going to give you fat plus protein. So you need all the different kinds of nutrients. So focus on both vegetarian and non-vegetarian sources. So some of the micronutrients that are important for an athlete would be antioxidants, because you're going to take up a lot more oxygen, and when you're taking up more oxygen, there is going to be more oxidative stress. So focus on antioxidants, because this prevents you from the free radical damage. So you can go for vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E. Vitamin C is extremely beneficial for your lung health also, as it prevents any upper respiratory diseases and disorders. So go for vitamin C. Vitamin E, completely important. Selenium and zinc is also important for wound healing and other requirements. Iron, again, extremely important. Before you start prescribing any supplements or consider any supplements for your athlete, one specific request from my side is please check the socio-economic status of the athlete. I cannot go to an athlete of mine and say that if they are low in iron, start taking dates every day. What if the athlete is a diabetic athlete? That time I cannot ask her. I have a type 1 diabetes athlete who plays badminton. So at that time, if someone is there who has an iron deficiency, please check the socioeconomic status in case of any deficiency and prescribing any supplement. So if they are not able to afford something as dates, then you can always go for the roasted Bengal gram dal, which is pottukadalai that we all add in tenga chutney. So go for pottukadalai with a glass of amla juice or some nellika juice, or it could even be just a lemon juice or some orange juice. So when you pair the iron source with a vitamin C source, you know that the absorption of iron is going to be much greater. So always consider the socioeconomic status. Calcium and vitamin D, extremely important for the bone health and others. Magnesium improves performance, and it also helps to manage your glucose levels. And sodium, obviously, yes, because you need to replenish your electrolytes. So focus on the electrolytes and proper hydration as well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now I request Mr. Joel again to let us know something about the wearables here, the video. Yeah, stay.
Hi everyone, my name is Joel Sundaram. I'm a competitive road cyclist for Team India. So let's talk about the tech that I use while training. So currently wearing a heart rate monitor, which is paired to my bike computer or head unit. So this tells me what my current heart rate is, you know, whether I'm training within my zones, so that I can make sure I'm not overdoing a particular workout. You know, when I'm supposed to ride easy, I'm supposed to ride in zone 2. And zone 2 is where, you know, your body uses fat as a fuel source. Anything over that, you know, you start using carbohydrates, and you know, the body has very limited carbohydrate stores, so it's important to keep on top of that while training. Another thing that I use is a power meter. The power meter is my pedals, and that's paired to the bike computer once again. So over there it's giving me my current power output. So now this is important because, once again, when training, you know, there are certain zones based on my physiology and some tests that I've done to help me train better. And also, more importantly, from the power number, you know, I'm able to calculate, well, the bike computer calculates how many calories I'm burning, so I can stay on top of my fueling. You know, got carbohydrates in the bottles, got my gels, so I don't run out of energy while training and racing. So yeah, also another neat feature about the bike computers, it's got an accelerometer in it. So, you know, God forbid I meet with an accident or something like that, my bike computer is connected to my phone, and it sends out an SOS message to my emergency contacts, so they are aware, you know, if any incident occurs. So yeah, that's just basic wearables that I use while training out on the bike. So yeah.
Lovely.
I'm not always breathing that hard when I'm training. I was just climbing uphill in Ooty. But yeah, I hope you're able to understand basically what is the technology that I use while training. Like cycling, I don't know how many of you are aware of the sports side of cycling, but it is heavily technology dependent. I mean, my bike computer, that small thing on the front that you can see on my handlebars, that records my current position, the temperature, the elevation, the sensors, my heart rate, the power that I'm putting out, the revolutions per minute, everything, how much I'm absorbing, how much I'm pushing, my left and my right. And all of this is a small file that's sent all the way across the world to my coach in Germany, and he's able to assess that and analyze my ride. So there is a lot of technology involved in that. Helps me as an athlete train better and understand what my capabilities are, where I'm lacking, where I'm able to push more. But that is the more advanced side of things. And if you're just looking at the bare basics when it comes to, you know, improving endurance and your aerobic fitness, it all comes down to your heart and building endurance there. So just getting something as basic as a heart rate monitor, heart rate strap that pairs to any smartphone, that's a good place to start. And also, a watch, a smartwatch, which helps you track your sleep, your resting heart rate, and maybe even HRV, which is your heart rate variability, which can tell you and predict or inform you when you're about to get sick, so that you don't push yourself a little too much at those those times, and you allow your body the time it requires to rest and come back to 100%. So yeah, any questions on heart rate? Variables?
Yeah. Do you have any safety beep in your machine or yourself, which can, if anything, some close to we have in our car, ting, 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 it can give you some.
Like on my bike?
Yeah, bike or something
sensor? There is another sensor.
Because you're driving on the highway with so close roads be going, so there must be something.
There is another sensor, but I don't own it. It's called a radar, which is put on the back of the bike, and it can detect up to 150 to 200 meters, or maybe even behind you.
And when does it start to beep?
It starts to beep as it's coming. It tells you the speed. If it's going over 60, 80, it gives you a speed and warns you of them approaching. But yeah, there is a lot of tech. And like I said in the video, there is an accelerometer in my bike computer which will detect any sudden change in momentum, aka crashing. So yeah, when you rapidly become stationary, it is not something good. So that is then connected to my phone, which will send an SOS message to my dad, my mom, and my friend, who will come to my rescue, which has happened in the past. And I hope it doesn't happen again.
Great. Now I request Professor Anil Ramchandran sir to deliver his talk on mental endurance.
Okay. I thought this was the last in the area, because normally when everything is set right, then we look for psychology. Right? When the training is done, VO2 is done, nutrition is done, now what is remaining? Now the mind is remaining. So still we have two more speakers to go. It was rightly pointed out, when you go from the normal to ultra normal, it is always in the mind. Whether the mind has a desire, the commitment, all these factors, though these are not that convincible to our athletes, at least to the Indian athletes, it's a very sorry thing, because these are not that measurable, right? Unlike physiological parameters, the psychological parameters are not that convincingly measurable. But I feel this is the most important area once you are looking at the elite level performance. And the biggest problem with Indian system is, at the end of the career at elite level, we look for some psychological support, which makes basically no difference. Because this is a long-term process, which is a build-up process, which is a developmental process, which has to come from the childhood onwards. Right? You cannot inject the mental strength into an athlete once he goes to the Olympic championship. Okay, in any case, mental endurance, the term which is used here, I think it reflects to how long and how well you are able to do a task. Right? There are other areas of mental variables, but here we are speaking in terms of mental endurance. So how successfully are you able to sustain those activities? That becomes the point of interest here. And success in face of any adversity brings down to three important areas: your right knowledge, the right journey which you are taking, and the right you. So I would stress on the last one. To become a champion athlete, the right you is important: the attitude, the habits, and the mentality. And what separates the best from the rest comes down to the smaller things called as habits. Habits and routines. If you have seen the videos of Nadal and Federer, they have all gone with small things in their life, in their routine, which has made tremendous difference in the performance at the highest level. So, which we normally don't consider. We think other parameters are more important. The terminologies in psychology, confidence, anxiety, motivation, may not be that catching, provided you set these small things right. So, the attitude is important. The habits, and we say habit formation has got the theory of habit formation says, if you do something for 21 days, it becomes part of you. Right? So anything, you wake up at 5 o'clock every day for 21 days, you automatically wake up because your rhythm is all set to it. So that habit, if you can put into the athlete, I'm sure he'll be able to sustain the activities in terms of enduring higher. Champion mindset, anything less than 100% belief is doubt. Right? There is no 60, 70%. It has to be 100%. Right? I was just referring to Abhinav Bindra saying that he was working on self-respect, self-regard. I would just say add any self before any variable, it makes so much of sense. Right? Any word, you add self before that. If it is self-confidence, self-esteem, self-regard, self-belief, it has to come from within. That makes the huge difference. The confidence is something which a person instills from outside. Self-confidence is something which comes from your inner. So once you add the word self, it makes magic in you because you are driven with that energy to do it. Right? So mental toughness, we always speak in terms of certain catchy words, the grit, the perseverance, the passion, long-term goal orientation, never give up attitude. Of course, resilience is one word which we often speak about. And resilience is something which I feel is a part of your past. Because you're born with adversities, you're born with difficulties, you are naturally resilient. You cannot build up resilience in an athlete. But the other things, the grit, the perseverance, the passion which can come from within. I just referred to Murphy, who was a 33-time English Channel swimmer. He was not a swimmer at all. And he gives a wonderful speech saying that I was not the best of the swimmers and I was not the fittest at all. But I had one thing, which was my mindset. I would not lose anything because of my mind. So I think in enduring performance, your mind becomes very important, provided all of the things are set right. Thank you.
Well, request again Ms. Srinivas to speak on the water changes everything.
So we spoke about nutrition first. Now let's talk a little about hydration. So proper hydration is important to prevent fatigue and recover from exercise because increased fluid intake is definitely necessary with prolonged or intense exercise due to increased sweat production. So as they keep working out and as they keep performing their activity, there is a higher amount of sweat production which causes the increase in fluid intake and the requirement for increased fluid intake. So even a slight amount of dehydration in an athlete can cause a significant decrease in the athletic performance. And during vigorous exercise, that is when the VO2 max is above 70%, we need to understand that the gastric emptying may limit the fluid absorption. So athletes have to train their gut, which I spoke about in the previous session also. They need to train their gut with higher volume of fluids, where they are intaking more volume of fluids, which will improve their gastrointestinal comfort, or they have to adopt to strategies which can increase their fluid intake before and after their exercise. So fluid intake has to be individualized to ensure athletes use opportunities to drink at a rate that prevents thirst. So just like the diet has to be individualized for each and every athlete, your fluid intake also has to be individualized. So carefully you have to monitor any acute changes in your lean body mass or over an exercise bout to decrease your sweat rate. And a fluid intake plan can be developed during training and in similar environmental conditions. So use changes in your body mass, use changes in the urine color and thirst upon awakening to track daily changes in your hydration status. So gut comfort is very important. It has to be considered, otherwise it may cause gastric distress. So make sure you are used to drinking enough water or drinking a big amount of water at one single time, so that it is not causing any kind of new symptoms for you on the day of the practice or on the day of the match. So exercising in the cold or higher altitudes, this has special considerations where you have to change your fluid status, and they also need to be very mindful about their fluid needs during the exercising while in the cold. So following the thirst cues and monitoring your parameters, as I said, body weight and color of the urine is very important. So before training, these are very rough general hydration guidelines. It is not for It is not for every single athlete over there. You need to get a personal plan according to your appropriate hydration for the individual needs. But a general guideline would be before training, 250 to 500 ml of water, that is 3 to 4 hours before the exercise. And during training, go for 400 to 800 ml of water, or it can be any other fluid needs. Post-training, 125 to 150% more than fluid loss, or you will take 1.25 to 1.5 liter per kg of weight loss. And you don't always have to just rely on water for this. You can also go for the other hydration techniques. You can use buttermilk, soups. Rasam is used by many people. So you can use any tender coconut water is a great way to hydrate yourself as well as replenish your electrolytes. So it just doesn't have to be water. You can also go for the other hydration sources. Thank you.
So now I call upon Sweta to speak on sleep. I hope you wake us from sleep or something.
Thank you, sir. So before starting, I want to know in the audience, do we have athletes here? Can I have a show of hands? Physiotherapists? Okay. So then I'll direct my presentation towards more of how you should use sleep for your patients. Let's start. The role of sleep in athletes. Can you kindly play the video? So, before anything, before this thing sorts out, let's talk about the 4 principles that I told you about. See, as a physiotherapist, as a doctor also, you should know these 4 principles, because that is how you will be able to prevent those injuries which are coming up in the athletes. You should be literate about these principles, just like the coaches as well. So the doctors, please note. Coming to sleep in athletes. So this is she is an international former Olympian who has been very vocal about her sleep issues, specifically insomnia. So elite athletes, they commonly have sleep disturbances and poor sleep quality, which is made worse by environmental demands. Because she was a skier, she injured her ACL, and post that she was having difficulty in sleeping because of pain. Now, what is the common sleep disorder? Insomnia. So insomnia is, you will keep on overthinking. Just look at the video and most of you or most of your athletes might relate to it. So we get athletes who have insomnia post-injury, post-surgeries, and then their recovery is, impaired. Then comes circadian dysregulation. But what is circadian rhythm? What makes you tick is the circadian rhythm. It is the natural cycle of your body. Automatically at night you want to sleep. Automatically in the morning you feel like waking up. But what happens is, during night, stress hormone, you go into deep sleep and you recover. But if this sleep is not, you don't get this sleep, your body goes into haywire, and there are accidents which happen. You are not able to train at a good intensity. The other problem is sleep apnea. So the people at the back are probably doing this right now. So sleep apnea. Why is sleep important for athletes? Let's talk about that. The first thing is it allows your heart to rest. It allows your tissues to repair, and it also prevents illness. These restorative effects increase the recovery and performance. Now, how sleep helps in athletes' mental status? It helps in forming long-term memories. It prevents decline in cognitive function, and it improves overall focus, mood, and prevents irritability. Again, therefore, leading to maintaining good mental health in the athletes. Healthy sleep, it helps the athletes have good physical and mental well-being, improved accuracy, and it prevents daytime sleepiness. Good quantity and quality of sleep, again, improves the athletic performance. Then what does lack of sleep do? 1, inhibited ability. That is, studies have shown that the reduction in average and total sprint time have been seen when they don't take proper recovery, proper rest. They have decreased accuracy and they have faster exhaustion. Apart from that, they also have difficulty in learning and decision making, and they have decreased reaction time. The risk of injury, illness, or immunosuppression increases. So sleep deprivation is very detrimental to athletes. I'll give you one example. We had a national athlete. She was operated. She went back to sport, and she was not well rested when she was training. The coach unfortunately made her do a very explosive routine which she was not ready for, and then she again ruptured her ACL. Similar cases we have seen again and again when there is recurrence of injury, because when we delve into the cause behind the injury, that is very important. You can treat the injury, but what is the cause? How did it happen? One important cause is they don't know when to train properly, when to train explosively. So how is sleep different for athletes? More sleep or extended sleep can benefit athletes' recovery and performance. Ideally, it is recommended to sleep for 7 to 9 hours of night sleep. And therefore you should treat sleep as part of your training. This is very essential. Sleep, recovery, it is part of your training. It is not a waste of time. Additional sleep, like napping after a night of inadequate sleep, before traveling to competition, before heavy competition, during times of illness or injury, this is encouraged, and as athletes can benefit from this additional sleep, except those with insomnia. Now, what is your chronotype? Chronotype means, are you a morning person or are you an evening person? That also can, change the way your training times. What is a beneficial sleep pattern? Less REM sleep, higher deep sleep, and lower respiratory rates. Therefore, you should have a variable where you can check what is your sleep. What is the pattern of your sleep? Because good quality of sleep there's evidence that lots of players improve after a good quality sleep. Next is the topic of jet lag, where you should prepare for travel. You mimic the time of the destination where you're traveling to. You should get enough sleep before traveling to avoid that sleep debt, and make a comfortable environment. You should stay hydrated, eat meals on the destination time. Fatigue or inability to perform their best is an issue which comes up because of this. Now, I'll give you some practical tips on how you can tell your patients to maintain a good sleep hygiene and therefore improve the recovery, and you also will benefit, your patients will come back better. So you should create a good environment when you're sleeping. It should be a dark and cool place, and it should be noise free. Ideally, they say the temperature should be 21 degrees Celsius. The other thing is, avoid alcohol and caffeine before bedtime. Stay away from electronics in the hours before bedtime. Have a wind down routine. I'll talk in brief about that. Get out of bed if you can't fall asleep after 20 minutes of trying. And diary writing. Coming to the wind down routine, you can do a hot shower, have milk because it has casein protein in it for recovery. Then you can do some diary writing, introspection, so that you don't overthink about these things. Just write it down and forget about it. Then meditate, do some box breathing. So have a little focus so that when you are training or when you will go to the competition, when you do this routine of meditation, box breathing, you will go back to that focus phase, and therefore you will be able to compete better. Visualization, and then you can go to sleep. So this is a routine that you should ideally follow, which works in some athletes, and they have seen very good results. If you have any questions, or if anyone wants to share about sleep disorders which they themselves face, you can kindly take the discussion from here. Any questions regarding this?
So how many of you love to sleep? Please raise your hand. No, I can't see 100%. It's not 100%. Okay. So there is a startup which you should Google, who are paying nowadays for the people who love to sleep. That can be a new occupation also. Thank you everyone. I will go to the next session. Who's left?
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Well, next, now we are moving on to power kick faculty session. For this, I would like to call upon secret behind power kick, Mr. Ganeshan as moderator, and along with them with the speakers. I would request Mr. Kannan Pugarendi, co-founder of SPARK, Sports Performance Assessment Rehabilitation Research Counseling Institute, Sports and Fitness Medicine Clinic, hashtag Move and Heal. Dr. Kannan Pugarendi, sir, kindly please join us on the stage. And he's been graduated from Madras Medical College and obtained Masters in Sports Medicine from New South Wales University, Australia. Traveled as sports physician, Indian cricket team in 1989 West Indian series. Sports physician of Atlanta Olympic in 1996. Physician of Indian hockey team for World Cup in 2002. Had been the sports physician for almost all international terms from India. Next, I would like to call Mrs. Nabila Nas. Ma'am, please kindly join us on the stage. Followed by her, I would like to call Mr. Aditya Ravi from Coimbatore and moved to Chennai to pursue professional cricket. Played in first division in Chennai. Founder of 22 Yards, the Complete Cricket app, a leading organization that scouts talent, organizes matches and hosts tournaments for all levels. Followed by him, I would like to call Mr. Suresh, the hurdles coach, onto the stage. Along with him, I would also like to call Mr. Ramakrishna Elapragada, currently working as Director, Academics and Projects, the Muscle Movement in Unschool, South India's first School of Sports and Fitness Sciences. Worked as General Manager, Fitness and Training, Fitness One Group India Limited. Worked as a sport fitness consultant for Chennai Cheetahs, hockey team at the World Series Hockey Tournament. Consulted MRF Pace Foundation as physio and fitness consultant. Welcome, sir. Please join us on the stage. Followed by him, I would like to call upon Mr. Avinash Kandalwal, BCCI Level 2 Certified Coach, NCA, BCCI, ZCA Camp under 16 and under 19. So please kindly join us on the stage. I would also like to invite Mr. Kannan Ram Narayanan to please join us on the stage. Due to time shortage, I request you not to take more than 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Unithan, sir, can we have on stage? Dr. Madan Balal is not available, so we can have you.
It's a humble request not to exceed more than 3 minutes. Thank you.
So there's a question for this. So you all know this shot. Sorry. I think you picked the answer. So can you tell me what's more important in this? Is it the bat speed, or is just Dhoni? So when we look at a shot like this, we talk about Dhoni's power, the kind of technique he has, and the amount of power he can generate. So what's the distance he was able to cover in this 6? What's the distance he was able to cover? 110. Yeah, I think I did run down the distance in the video.
It's massive! It's out of the ground! Find it in Cubbon Park!
So that's 110 meters.
You will not see a ball hit further than that for a long, long time.
So my session is going to be on something on the power generation for jump or run or kick. And then just an introduction into the kinetic chain, how the core system works, what about the assessments, screening things we can do, and how you can identify a poor core. And based on that, we're going to work on. So the kinetic chain concept has been evolved or come into existence in the last decade or so. So it is named as kinetic chain, sometimes as myofascial chain, and also as muscle sling. So basically all the things are indicating that something is connected across the body and then going on. So this is all structurally what we see. Punjabi is the guy who had earlier informed us about the system where you can have a lateral system, anterior system, posterior system. His understanding was the muscles work in unison with one group to the other group, where it could be either a stabilizer or a mobilizer, and that is how they were functioning when we were doing a functional test or an activity based thing. Then we had the anatomy trains by Thomas Myers, and there are various lines. So ideally you will see that the lines are specifically about 18 lines as prescribed by him. A lot of the time people talk about the anterior line, posterior line and the spiral line, but there are so many lines which goes in detail to see functionally how you can go about it. So this is we understanding a cricket bowling in action. So it's a functional one, what Joffer Archer is able to deliver. So the understanding with any function or movement is how the forces are transmission. When we talk about kinetic chain, we said structure. So I can tell this is the hamstring muscle attached over here, and then the continuation of the fibers going onto the gastroc. So that's the myofascial. But the forces generation is again something where there has to be a transition of forces from one component to the another component, and there has to be a perfect timing to deliver those things. So if you are looking at a mass, what we were seeing in a bowling, then it is by the momentum, mass, and that will be determining the speed. What we are looking here at is how you are able to deliver. So if you're looking at a kick, a person able to kick, so you need to look at the total moment of inertia, that is, you will be your consideration of the mass of the entire limb, and the radius of gravitation will be from the hip. So then you will be able to have more momentum to generate, but it does not work just as unison with only the hip. It has to also have the knee, which will have less mass, but then the velocity can increase, and the same thing will apply and go down to the ankle. So can you tell this opponent team in this? France. It's France. So what is the physics behind this kick? It's the Magnus effect, or the swing what you are able to get, and it is well documented and tell that how beautiful this kick walk. Now if you see the kick where Roberto Carlos had taken it, it's more than about 20 yards he has to run and then generate the power. That means what? In order to have that effect on the ball, Roberto Carlos has to create that speed. That power is only possible only by this guy. And if you see in the documents, it says that Roberto Carlos had a quadriceps girth of about 24 centimeter. And he had a solid mass of his quadriceps which was able to make that effect. So looking at kicking as a biomechanical activity, it has been documented and researched over a period of time. So if you are looking at just as a football kick, we can divide them into phases. We are looking at as a toe off or a mid-lower leg angular velocity where you are preparing to go and get, and the last one will be where you will going to be having your impact on the ball. So these are various forms how they are going to use to kick. So you can see he is starting from a lateral position and then he just starts from a straight on position. Okay, so we can see three different positions by three different players. The arm position, what it goes on. So can Kannan sir, can you enlighten us something on the three positions, how they are standing and trying to kick? Can you give us something how we will probably look at as a kinetic chain aspect, which guy is probably having a better core?
See, when we are looking at the position of the foot that is on the ground, that is the first contact through which the force is generated. If that foot is not on the ground, there's no way you can. So the firmer you press on that foot, then you can generate the force on the other.
So the more stable, grounded.
Yeah, that's the first thing. And the direction in which the foot is pointing, where the ball is, where the foot is. The foot is behind the ball.
So this is the point you're talking about, sir.
Where in the second person, the foot is behind the ball. So his CG is not going to come into the ball at all. Whereas this person is going to have the CG coming in even for him. But he's leaning, he's already here. He has not opened up yet. And the second thing is the amount of flexion that has happened in the knee and the extension at the level of the hip. Those are required for us to make contact and carry the ball forward, which will also come with a follow through. And amount that the individual is able to, the neck, how they are leaning here, there, to also make changes in the kinetic chain, which is also important, which we will not be able to make in one picture trying to make this analysis. It has to be on the sagittal, frontal, on both the sagittal, frontal, and also the transverse planes. Now, apart from that, if you see actually the hip being high here in the second one, we can see that he is going to have a lever that's better. But this guy, because of his foot is actually in front of the ball.
Yes.
He has placed it beside the ball. His heel is almost in line with the ball. So this way also he can't generate, this guy can't generate, the first guy would generate far better force.
Yes. Thank you. Sir, anything you can add up on John? Anything you can add up with the arm position, the importance of the arm position when a footballer takes a kick?
Yeah, sorry, football's not my area of expertise, but you've got to consider the whole body as one unit when we're talking kinetic chains. That's why we look at hip rotation in tennis servers and the impact on tennis serve and vice versa. So, and one of the things I look at is the incidence of back injury. The first place I look in a throwing athlete is the shoulder, because they've got to find mobility somewhere else in order to generate force. So the consideration of where the shoulders and the amount of thoracic rotation there would be something that I'd be looking at as well in order to generate force lower down the chain.
And the position of the hand, the first one on the elbow, again, he's much lower, where the others are balanced, where the arm, your chest cavity is going to be open.
So the center one is the guy who's better balanced. Yes. So
but his foot position is behind.
Yes.
There are issues in which foot position made unfortunately, the whole.
So I just picked up the pictures so that, give some variations to see how we can do that. So that's Dr. Kannan doing a biomechanical analysis just from a movement. So Madam Nabila, so being a biomechanics on the lab or we have these technologies. Now, is kinetic chain evaluated in the lab as a kinetic chain or as individual joint functions?
It should be evaluated as a kinetic chain, but right now we look at the equipments that we have. At least it measures the forces, and if you want to analyze the kinetic chain engagement, you have to do a motion analysis. You have to take a video of the person executing the skill and then conduct an analysis on it. Because the equipments that you have in a biomechanical lab can give you the forces. When a person is jumping, for example, on a force plate, it'll give you the force, maybe even the disparity in force. But unless you take a video of it and analyze it later, you will not be able to understand what is going wrong with the skill, and you will not be able to work on that. For example, I would just, because I watch tennis a lot, everyone, I think those who are watching tennis will know Andy Roddick, right? Andy Roddick is someone who was known for his serve, and he had tremendous serve speed, and he was known for his, biomechanics of serve, and there was a biomechanical study done on him. But later in his career, he got into shoulder injuries followed by back injury, and because of that, he was not able to engage his kinetic chain. So it is not about one muscle. It is the entire chain. And if you injure a part of it, then you will not be able to transfer the force effectively. So, and the whole thing can be done by taking a video of it and doing an analysis on it later. So that's just one example that I want to give.
Here it's a picture of a moving three-dimensional reality. So we are having a still picture and may not still be able to get to analyze them. It's as the position is what we can.
Yeah, but just like with the picture, we are able to probably still get where the problem is, like a screening test. So we know, okay, something is wrong in this guy, so we can then go on to a detailed thing.
Yes, actually, sir, you would need a video from different planes to do an analysis properly, not just from a still picture.
We do have videos. We do have videos.
Yeah.
So basically we are talking about the energy transfer. As so initially said in football, if you're going to have a kick, you need to have a stable foot, stable platform through which you can deliver a good mobility. So that goes even in martial arts. And as you asked for a video, so I did try for Roddick because that's the fastest serve this guy can get. And if you look at, again, we are talking about the kinetic chain in badminton, volleyball, everything. Now, my question here to Kannan sir and ma'am is, when you said about football kick, you need to have a stable platform. This guy is not on a stable platform. He's on air. How do you expect them to deliver a 140K serve?
Okay. In this particular condition, he is up in the air and his CG is falling into the ball.
Forward motion.
Yes. You are hitting from here, not from here. Everything is generated from here. So if you see very carefully, when he went up, go back on that a little. Yeah, there was another. Yeah. Yeah, you can leave that there. Can you come play that again now? Play that. Play that. Halt. Yeah.
So this is the transition phase.
Actually, we are in the sagittal plane. We should have seen this in the other plane for us to know how much this has gone in.
Lateral move.
And this is waiting to unroll. Yeah. Because that torque force that he creates is a key element for his success in his and meets the ball at the highest point, so that from that height he is able to decide where it can be placed. Then it is, because you are literally a taller man throwing a short put and a shorter guy throwing a short put, the release point is higher. So he gets the maximum height in that, throwing his body weight into it, is literally moving into the court. He is going to find it difficult after serving to pull back. Yes. This guy has to finish the serve and get away. That is his advantage.
Yes. And in terms of the badminton smash, a tennis or a volleyball smash, we will always see that when they once go up on the air, their legs will go into a flexion. So we are looking at the anterior chain, which is the one that's going to produce the forces in terms of contraction, whereas the posterior is going to stabilize posteriorly and control the movements.
Yeah, wherever the forces are going to be transferred this way.
Yes, so in the tennis, it's probably the push-off from the ground where the energy transfers, the stability. So if your push-off is not good, then your transmission and delivery is not going to be. So the message will be that when you look at somebody who's going on a basketball, there you don't need power, you need more precision. That is more important. So anything you push off, you need that stable platform and then transition going on. So the idea is, from the kinetic chain, we are understanding the core incorporated into that. So that's your lumbopelvic hip complex. So that is involving your hip, your pelvis, and the lumbar. So these three are integrated, and functionally they are interrelated. So we have two joints which has got 3 planes of movement, and one joint with 2 planes of movement in between. And the main function of the core stability is going to be controlling the trunk in your movements which is happening, and they all rely on a pre-programmed manner which you have trained over a period of time. Now, only thing is, if there's going to be a disturbance into this system, then you are going to have injuries. And core muscles, the basic understanding of core muscles is evolved from, I think, 1970s when the term core started, and the Pilates came into existence, and they also picked it up. And now we are in a stage where there are questioning about, is there really a core concept? Because there is no textbooks which clearly defines which are the core muscles. Every author has got their own system of having core. But for the basic understanding, it is your pelvic floor, multifidus, your transverse abdominis, and your diaphragm. And the most important abdominal muscles. A lot of the time people want to know whether I have to improve my core or back strengthening. And if you're looking at the abdominal, please understand transverse abdominis is the deepest, followed by obliques and the rectus. This muscle does not do any function. It's just a stabilizer. This is a weak flexor, but it's the obliques. And the challenge with obliques is multidirectional. It works on all three planes. So that's the most challenging one to work on different direction. So just to see a quick understanding of the action, that's your important movement of pelvic tilt, your trunk flexion, side flexion. You will also have isometric side flexion. That will be your obliques, where you can do isometric, and then you have your external and internal both combined together for your rotations. And then we look this into a component of going from the limb and other things, saying into a kinetic chain. So coming on to stability and mobility, what we were talking about earlier. So we all know that a stable platform is mandatory to progress into any form of a power generation in terms of kick or throw. And maximum power is generated through this system is about 85%. So we have Mr. Vallabhan here. So your take on this, if you can, you have something on. So Vallabhan is a physiotherapist from Chennai.
Good evening, everyone. As Dr. Physiotherapist Ganesan sir said about the transverse abdominis muscle and multifidus muscle, and it is a question about whether the recruitment is there or the core concept on it. And then he started about the pelvic bowl fixation, like anterior roll, posterior roll. But when it comes to now into advanced strength and conditioning, with all the trainers are getting into is somewhere around anti-flexion, anti-extension, anti-rotation, and anti-side flexion. So anti-flexion is the anterior core, and you resist anti-flexion into it, and anti-extension is the resistance again, resisting against anti-extension, and anti-rotation, that is where exactly like stability, all these things comes in stability when it demands. So spine has two different functions. First is to mobilize in all three directions, as Dr. Kannan said and Nabila said, like it's a three-dimensional biomechanics, anterior, sagittal, and torsional. So spine has to move forward, backward, sideways, right side and left side, and then rotate. And also it has to stabilize on all these three areas. And depending upon bilateral or unilateral activity, it has to fix on one side. That is basically we dissociate. Pelvis has to, spine has to integrate with pelvis, and spine has to dissociate with the spine. So dissociation, and that's what I said.
Okay.
Excuse me. Stability versus mobility challenge. When spine requires mobility, it requires mobility. When it requires stability, it requires stability. And it has to know its proprioception spine. For example, I'm coming to flexion, I'm coming to extension. Where my spine is holding, that is where the proprioception matters, and it has to dissociate with either the upper spine or lower spine, whether with cervical with thoracic, or thoracic with lumbar, or lumbar with thoracic, or lumbar with pelvis. And it has to same dissociate, fixing one pelvis and moving the other pelvis, where this transfer comes from one area to other area, whether it is going to be a glute right from frontal to frontal or sagittal to frontal. So depending upon dissociation and bilateral demands versus unilateral demands. And you have to also maintain the load. Sometimes it can be symmetrical load, or it can be an asymmetrical load, or it can be an unilateral load. And also you need to know whether you're working on control and whether chaos environment. For example, if it is going to be any particular sport like long jump, you know where you are going to start and where you are going to end. So it is going to have a control on that area. Whereas in basketball and other areas, you jump and you land, or you kick and you have a parallel player along with your side, it is going to be under chaos. So depending upon that area, the level of stability, you have to work. You need to work on anti-flexion, anti-extension, anti-rotation, and anti-side flexion, depends on the kinetic chain and integration with the other things. So, sorry, I'm a little fast.
When we are talking about an anti-flexion resistant, are you talking about an isometric or isotonic or what?
It's isometric mostly, so.
Pardon?
Isometric mostly.
Isometric. And what will be the breathing control in those components? You're in inhalation, exhalation, or in hold?
No, sir. It requires like diaphragmatic patterns along with it.
Yes. The diaphragm has to move down.
Yes,
if
absolutely.
the diaphragm has to move down, because எல்லாருக்கும் diaphragm வந்து உங்க diaphragmன்றது உதர விதானம், அது வந்து உங்களுடைய ஸ்பைனை ஸ்டெபிலைஸ் பண்ணுது. அதாவது it stabilizes your spine. Till now we never read diaphragm as a spinal stabilizer. We have been reading diaphragm as only a respiratory muscle. In medical colleges till date we are taught only it's a respiratory muscle. Suppose you are also doing any kind of activity, the diaphragm will only look at the importance is towards your respiration, not to your movement. If you are not coordinated with your breath, either bowling, boxing, serving, kicking, if your coordination is not optimal, the diaphragm will fail to support that movement, which is very vital from the superior aspect, stabilizing the spinal vertebrae. Possibility of an injury is just going to happen. So vital component is when you are looking, நீங்க அவங்கள பாக்கும்போது அவங்களுடைய pelvic region tilt ஆயிருக்கா, that is this tilted this way or rotated this way or rotated this way. You have to be seeing that repeated. Ilana, you have to put markers. I think morning they had shown you the markers that they had put on this thing to analyze, no? So those are the things to be done.
So in the modern medicine, how much of the concept is well understood by the players and coaches? So
doctors are understanding now. So players and coaches will take more time because it is not trickled down. We have not, frankly speaking, these are concepts that are being used, and we found there is enough evidence as an output that we are seeing results. The research, like Tommy Myers'
functional line,
the functional line, the superficial back line, the spiral line, superficial front line, the deep front line, arm line, these are created by a non-medical person, not so easily be brought into a medical environment and be accepted. But we find that it works very well. We have to accept the fact that this is phenomenal work, and it does work. But again, it has to go back to the training and the teaching the athletes, which is going to be much more difficult, because already normal anatomy itself is difficult. So when you take them into something much more which even the doctors have not got it yet, it's going to be a difficult one.
John?
Because I'm not finding, see, I'm making a very important statement. It is not in our curriculum. Fascia is not in the curriculum.
So does that mean that it is not necessary, or it should be?
It should be.
That's the way you have to put it.
It should be.
It is not at the same, then what people think, oh, it is not necessary.
No. It is not in our curriculum. That is why a few of us who are talking about it will be, hey, what is he talking about? What is fascia? IT band is not just a band. It is a very important structure stabilizing the pelvis.
And it's a very thick fascia. And we cannot stretch it.
No other animal has it except human beings. We are the only animal that has that, because we are standing upright on two, not on four.
Can I add on this? Yeah. IT band, as we discussed, it cannot be stretched. But only thing, as it's a thick fascia, It can ability to absorb load and transfer it, and it can also like the tensegrity property with respect to fascia has not been discussed as it's not in the curriculum, but it can remodel inside itself.
See, we have to understand fascia behaves different than muscle. Carla Stecco, an orthopedic surgeon doing a lot of work on fascia, Robert Schleip, who has also written their books. Phenomenal work, and you can see the training is going to change. All our knowledge about fast twitch, flow twitch, everything is going to change. If you're going to apply fascial planes and fascial system into the training, it is going to be again mind-boggling for us to redo the whole thing.
Entire thing. Okay. So coming on to assessments, there are quite a bit of assessments, and the common ones in the morning we had about the landing, jump landing. So when do you think you can do a quick assessment for the kinetic chain as such? And what tests would you like to prefer using? Sir Kannan, sir?
Could you, the question is very vague. For whom?
So if I have an athlete who's just coming into for a rehab, some lower limb pain, would you do a kinetic chain evaluation?
I would rather, if I have a video of his previous performance, I will go through them, understand what could have been a mechanical issue to be taken care of. And on a musculoskeletal assessment, today we can find out whether there's a shortening or lengthening of any of the muscles, which are, Yanda has put forth so much of a muscle evaluation, which we can go through, and understand the stabilizers and mobilizers and their performance together, whether the stabilizers are weak, so the mobilizers are brought into effect.
Yeah.
Okay, உங்களுக்கு என்ன புரியலனா நம்ம உடம்புல type 1 இருக்கு, type 2 இருக்கு. இந்த type 1 muscles
so I have this
muscles.
one for you, sir.
Perfect.
The next one.
Okay, there's a type 1 and a type 2. Idhila deeper muscles are supposed to be stabilizers. Stabilize panadhu. Like we have brachialis. In the brachialis, appears not important. But brachialis stabilizes the elbow joint, and biceps mobilizes the elbow joint. So for a fast twitch that has to come, throw, etc., comes from the biceps brachii. But whereas stability is required for mobility. So you require both. So we are trying to understand if the stabilizers are not healthy or strong, the mobilizers will be used and fatigue will happen and injury can happen. So we need to understand the stabilizers are important, on which fascial system are brought in, or in the multiple chains are also brought in, and tensegrity concept is brought in. So it is going to be much more difficult for everyone to understand it. It has to be a team where each one may find one concept very important and they give views. So I may be found fault on another person's view.
Yes.
It's a blue filter and a yellow filter.
Can I have a question for John? How much of this is still relevance in clinical practice, the Jandas concept?
Yeah, this is quite interesting because it comes back to screening, really. And I sort of agree with the doctor here in that you need the pre-injury videos, imagery, whatever it may be, to give you a clue. Because by then once they present in the rehab phase, it's almost too late because your data's got to be flawed on your screening then. But this is where I have an issue with screening full stop. And I've always said that screening, the most important part of screening is the history, is your history taking. I've worked with some of the best athletes in the world, Olympic gold medalists to world champions, the best cricketers, whoever. And if they present, which most of them do when you're screening them pre-season with multiple problems, and a lot of them present with multiple problems, you then have to ask the question, if it's not broken, then don't fix it. If they're still performing at the best of their ability, they're injury-free, they're consistently performing injury-free, and they're presenting with no problems, then I will never change, despite how bad their screening data is and their imbalances. I would never change it, because the only thing you're going to do there is potentially disrupt an efficient and effective system. What I do is I make note of those things, And should problems start to arise, should performances start to drop, then I have something to go back to manipulate in order to improve performance. But I'm very, very wary of when I see screening forms. We do it because we want the information. But I will not impact on those screening forms unless there is a problem. And there was a classic example in the last IPL where we had a player who came in who'd had recent surgery on his ankle. He had a TA rupture. And he was performing functionally. He had returned to all his pre-injury parameters. Yet he had only 1 centimetre of knee-to-wall test, which, if you know in a bowler, is horrendous on his loaded side. And so it became a priority from the medical team to improve his testing parameters for his knee-to-wall test, his dorsiflexion test. But only when we started exploring that did other problems then start to arise for him, and it did impact on his performance. So we never challenge anything that potentially can impact on their current performance. And as I said, the best players in the world, if they're performing at their best, they're injury-free, most of them in a unilateral sport like football or any of those will present with major imbalances. Do not change something that's not broken.
So the next... One more component, whenever we can see an injury or a pain in elite level athletes or especially young athletes today, not only their training, please see what they do the rest of the day. That is also training. They are sitting on a cell phone and watching Netflix or sitting with a laptop. These are issues which is training. நான் உங்களுக்கு சொல்றது அவங்க ஸ்கூலில் காலேஜில் ட்ரெயின் பண்ணுற டைமை தவிர்த்து வீட்டில் எவ்வளோ நேரம் செல்ஃபோனை பிடிச்சிக்கின்னு டிவியை பிடிச்சின்னு உக்காந்துனுங்கிறாங்களோ அதுவும் ட்ரைனிங்கு. அது உங்கள் ட்ரைனிங்க்கு எனிமையாக ஆகலாம். ஆளை கழுத்து வலி வருது முதுவலி வருதுன்னா தயவு செஞ்சு என்ன பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கா வீட்டிலன்னு கேளுங்க. இல்லைன்னா அது தெரியாது.
Yeah, I completely agree because I just had one patient yesterday. It was very funny because a 12-year-old girl had come complaining of ankle pain, and she's a swimmer and she's going for the state championship, so she comes running in the morning. This is at 6 o'clock, and I ask her, okay, what you were training, you were running and everything, and then she said, yeah, I was running, and then slowly I just simply asked, okay, so do you do anything else? Yeah, I've been practicing for there's a art program just after the swimming. I've been practicing for 3 years continuously dancing. So that is the thing which usually we miss out always. What is the rest of the thing what a child does? When it's quite important. I definitely agree. Usually they do sit.
The nutritionist was talking about hydration. He didn't drink because he is not thirsty. Thirst is a bad indicator. If thirst is not taken, you don't wait for thirst. You are told, please drink. So when there's an injury, you are only looking, physiotherapist has to fix it. Prevent it. This morning also everyone was saying prevention. That's the whole idea. Prevention is dependent on your discipline. Indiscipline cannot work with athletic population. It's impossible. So Mr. Natarajan was told not to eat chocolates when he went to Switzerland. And he's sitting in Switzerland and he can't take chocolates and he's in a training. He vowed to himself that he'll go back and eat after the training, then all are over. He went there and only ate those chocolates.
So taking it forward, whenever there is a screening or an evaluation or an injury, sometimes there has to be a change in the exercise program or some technique in terms of their sporting skill. So this is where the question of motor learning and motor relearning comes in. Now, as a biomechanics, ma'am, how challenging is to convince the coach or the player that you have to indicate them that, okay, these are the changes you need to bring in. So I'm going to start with you and then go on with the questions with the others.
Okay, so I think at the coach level itself, I think before motor learning, it's the unlearning part that they have to understand. Whatever, if there is a wrong movement, incorrect movement, at the coach level itself, they understand because they are They are the ones closely observing the athletes. And if you look at a pattern which is a error or not so correct, it's very difficult to just learn a new pattern, new skill. You have to first unlearn it and then relearn it, and it is a very long process. So changing a technique is not recommended. That's why they say that changing a technique is not recommended until or unless, actually it is not recommended at any scenario. You need to look at their technique because they have adapted the technique from the very beginning, and they've been doing it. The injury can be because of multiple factors, not just because of the error in the technique, right? So you have to look at you have to give it a multifactorial approach and just not say the athlete to change their technique. I'll just give you an anecdote from last week that I was actually working with a para athlete. He's in the throw event, javelin throw, and he's approaching a major competition. And they asked me to do a biomechanical analysis, and I did. And I realized that he has a very inconsistent angle of release, right? And whenever he has that 38 to 40 degrees, because these are para-athletes, their angles are very different from able-bodied athletes, right? So if the angle is falling between 35 to 38 degrees, he was having a good distance as compared to whenever it was going off. And it is not the right time to recommend him anything, you have to do this or that to consistently get the angle right. Because out of 13 throws, he was hardly getting 2-3 throws right. And I can't just go and tell the coach or the athlete that you need to change the technique, right? That's going to completely change and disrupt, because he's one of the potentials, and even with the wrong or elevated or whatever higher angle, he's able to reach the distance, right? So the technique is not always the answer. To changing the technique is never the answer, according to me. The other experts can answer on this. You have to look at all the aspects before just telling them, you need to change your technique, and you have to do something to get the angle right all the time consistently.
Yes. I have Suresh there, our 110 meters hurdle. He himself has had injuries, and now he is also a coach. So Suresh, சொல்லுங்க, நீங்க வந்து டெக்னிக் ஏதாவது சேஞ்ச் பண்ணீங்களா, இல்ல பேட்டர்ன் சேஞ்ச் பண்றதுல டிஃபிகல்ட்டிஸ் இருந்ததா? மென்டல் டிஃபிகல்ட்டிஸ் ஃபர்ஸ்ட் என்னது?
கண்டினியூஸ் லோடு நிறையா கொடுத்தனால தான் எனக்கு ஃபஸ்ட்டு இன்ஜுரி வந்துச்சு. எனக்கு வந்து இந்த கார்ட்லேஜ் இன்ஜுரி. ஸோ அது சந்தோஷ் டாக்டர்கிட்ட தான் வந்து ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் பண்ணேன். நான் தான் ஃபஸ்ட்டு அத்லீட் எனக்கு தெரிஞ்ச இந்த கார்ட்லேஜ் இந்த மொசைக் பிளாஸ்டிக் சர்ஜரி பண்ணி திரும்ப கம்பேக் வந்தது அத்லெட்டிக்ஸ் ஃபீல்டில். கம்பேக் வித் 7 நேஷனல் மெடல்ஸ். ஸோ அத்லீட் வந்து ரியல் லைஃப்லேயுமே ரொம்ப ஹாப்பியாக இருக்கலாம். ஏன்னா அவங்க பார்த்த ஸ்ட்ரகிளை வந்து யாருமே பார்த்துருக்க மாட்டாங்க லைஃப்பில். அண்டு அதுவும் சர்ஜரி 4 சர்ஜரி. நான் தான் ரெகுலர் கஸ்டமர், ஆர்த்தோனுக்கு ஒரு பார்ட்னர்னு கூட சொல்லலாம். ஏன்னா அனஸ்திட்டிஸ்ட்டே வந்து என் ஃபைல் எடுத்து பார்த்துட்டு உங்களுக்கு சொல்ல வேண்டியதில்லை, அதே மாதிரி இந்த மாதிரி ஒரு ஊசி போடுவாங்க, அப்புறம் அப்படியே உங்களுக்கு ஒன்றும் தெரியாது, ஆப்ரேஷன் பண்ணுவாங்க அப்படின்னு போயிட்டாங்க. அந்த மாதிரி 4 சர்ஜரிஸ் பண்ணியிருக்கேன். ஃபர்ஸ்ட் சர்ஜரி பண்ணதுக்கப்புறம் 1 இயர் அப்புறம் கூட என்னால் வந்து திரும்ப ஜாக் பண்ணுறப்ப பெயின் இருந்துச்சு. அப்போ சந்தோஷ் டாக்டர் வந்து கேட்டேன், இந்த மாதிரி இன்னும் பெயின் இருக்குது சார், நான் நார்மல் பர்சனுக்கு பண்ணியிருக்கேன், நீங்கள் தான் ஃபஸ்ட்டு ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ்மேன் இந்த சர்ஜரி பண்ணது அப்படின்னாரு. ஸோ அதுக்கப்புறம் நான் திரும்ப வந்து மெடல் பண்ணதுக்கப்புறம் என்னைய மாதிரி திரும்ப ஒரு ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ்மேன் வர்றப்போ அவர் ஒரு கான்ஃபிடண்ட்டாக இந்த மாதிரி பண்ணி திரும்ப 7 நேஷனல் மெடல் பண்ணியிருக்காரு, நீங்கள் கண்டிப்பாக பண்ணலாம், இந்த சர்ஜரி வந்து சக்ஸஸ்ஃபுல்லாக முடியும் அப்படின்னாரு. ஸோ ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ்மேனுக்கு வந்து அந்த பேஷன்ஸ் தான் ரொம்ப கஷ்டமான விஷயம். நான் ஃபஸ்ட்டு சர்ஜரி அந்த பண்ணுறப்போ நான் இண்டோர் ஏஷியன் சாம்பியன்ஷிப் போயிட்டு வந்தேன், நேஷனல் ரெக்கார்ட் இன் 60 மீட்டர் ஹர்டில்ஸ். அடுத்து ஏஷியன் கேம்ஸ் இருக்குது. இப்போ கேம்ப் கோச்சஸ்லாம் சொல்கிறாங்க, நீங்கள் கண்டிப்பாக ஏஷியன் கேம்ஸ் இது பண்ணலாம், ஃபுல் சப்போர்ட் பண்ணுவோம். 1 வீக்கில் இந்த மாதிரி இன்ஜுரி ஆயிடுச்சு. அப்படியே லைஃப்பில் அதுதான் பெரிய டார்கெட்டாக இருக்கும். எவ்ரி அத்லீட்ஸ் ஷார்ட் கோல் வச்சுருப்போம், ஏஷியன் கேம்ஸ், அடுத்து ஒலிம்பிக்ஸ், அப்படி இப்படி போகிறப்ப அப்படியே நம்ம கரியரே ஸ்டாப் ஆகிற மாதிரி இருக்கும். ஸோ அந்த பேஷன்ஸ் தான் ரொம்ப முக்கியம் ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ்மேனுக்கு. இந்த இன்ஜுரியிலேருந்து கம்பேக் வர்றப்ப சில பேர் என்ன பண்ணுவாங்கன்னா, ஒரு 1 வீக்கில் லைட்டாக பெயின் இல்லாத மாதிரி இருக்கும், உடனே வேகமாக ஓடி பார்ப்பாங்க, அப்புறம் திரும்ப பெயின் ஆகும், திரும்ப ஒரு 1 வீக் ரிவர்ஸ். கையை வச்சு பாதி பேர் எடுத்துருவாங்க உள்ளேருந்து வெளியே வலிக்குதான்னு செக் பண்ணி ஸோ அந்த பேஷன்ஸ் தான் ரொம்ப முக்கியம் எல்லா ஆத்லீட்ஸுக்கு. அதுவும் கண்டிப்பாக இன்ஜுரி இல்லாமல் எந்த ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ் மேனும் பண்ண முடியாது. எவ்வளோ முக்கியமாக நம்ம ப்ரிவென்ட் பண்ண முடியுமோ நம்ம எல்லாமே பண்ணிகிட்டே தான் இருந்தாலும் ஆக்சிடென்டலாக நிறைய இன்ஜுரிஸ்லாம் நடக்கும், முக்கியமாக ஹேர்டில்ஸில். ஸோ அந்த பேஷன்ஸ் தான் ஸ்போர்ட்ஸ் கரியர்லேயும் சரி ரியல் லைஃப்லேயும் சரி. ₹1 கோடி போனால் கூட கவலைப்பட மாட்டேன், அவ்வளோதான், நான் போயிட்டு போகுது அடுத்து பார்த்துக்கலாம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு. ஸோ பேஷன்ஸ் தான் முக்கியமாக கற்றுக்கிட்டது. சக்ஸஸ், வின்னிங், அந்த எமோஷன்ஸ்லாம் அதுக்கப்புறம்.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Ram, can you tell us about how the challenges are there with, the changes in the exercises plan or what you suggested?
Is that the slide or this was a different
one?
Okay. Now, most important thing is what everybody spoke about here. Is the change required? Is there a change required in technique or not? It is required if your goal is functional efficiency. And if your goal is structural efficiency, and that too if it is needed. So as a trainer, I have always faced this problem when I go to a gym where an unaligned kinetic chain leads to all the issues. Because one of the primary thing is trainers per se don't understand what is kinetic chain is all about. Hopefully after today's session, people who are getting into the training field would have an idea about it. But when we talk about corrective exercise over there, if you look at it, 4 different phases. A trainer's role will mainly come around in active and integrate stage. But initially it's all about the role of physio there working. Again, it is all about conditioning period. See, in initial stages of any training, it's all about conditioning, where you're getting the person ready for that activity. And post-injury, when they've come for rehab and come for physio, and you've finished your physio rehab and you're going to start training for that activity, you need to first work on the inhibitory techniques where myofascial release as a technique of, not just post-exercise as a, what do you call it, cool down technique. It can even be given as a post-warm-up as well. As a slow, sustained way, so that you activate those muscles. That's where the physio's role will come into play. And then you work on static stretching and neuromuscular or your PNF. Then you work on their kinesthetic awareness, joint position sensation, whether you're aware of where you are. Because it's all about balance. When we talk about efficiency, whether you are able to generate economic activity, that means less energy, more, work output. And that will happen only where there is a structural and functional efficiency, and they are interrelated. That's because of the kinetic chain alignment. Now, then comes to the activation, and that's where really I struggle when I try to train my trainers. Because the role of, isolated training, unilateral training is very, very important to avoid dominant side activity, and many in sports. And sports is a game which is played in movement. You don't stand at one place and play. So there is always a change of kinetic chain there. There is always a change of stability. So to maintain equilibrium into that aspect is very, very important. So especially when you talk about kicks, you're standing on one leg and having suppose a blade kick or reverse kick. How difficult it is to maintain your balance, and that's where the kinetic chain alignment comes into a play. So we work on isolated strengthening, isometric strengthening, and positional isometric. Very, very important thing about training when you come about corrective exercise is isometric workout. Not many people emphasize. They think this holding a weight is isometric. There are many types of isometric, from cyclic isometric, hold isometric, low dimensional isometric. There are multiple, and that's a whole lot of different session for that. But you need to understand the importance of isometric to activate those neuromuscular junction, to stimulate those nerves. Because when you stimulate them, that's when the movement, that is where your starting of movement, learning of movement can start from. And then coming down to your integrate, that's where I said about movement, right? Dynamic. Because each sport is played in a dynamic manner. Now you're working on stable surface, unstable. So when you're training your core exercises also, initially in activate, you're working on stable surfaces. Then you get into unstable surfaces, like standing on a Bosu ball or Swiss ball. Morning we saw about a band, we discussed that, right, Herman? And your back leg was on a foam roll. Because you're creating an unstable surface there. And that is where your structural efficiency is enhanced. And in the end, when you're learning the movement, your functional efficiency is enhanced. And that is where we work on integrated dynamic movement, and we work on stability and the control of the movement. Thank you. So to be added, anything to that? One more thing. How many of you are trainers here, non-physios? Please focus on understanding kinetic chain first. It is nothing but it is a combination of muscles, bones and joints, and neural pathway. As we talk about, in educational sports science, there's a teamwork. Inside our body, there is a teamwork of muscle, bones and joints, and neural pathway. Any one thing gets affected, there is an overload on other two things. And that is where imbalance happens, and that is where repetitive stress injury and cumulative injury comes into play. So understand that. Thank you.
So we have Mr. Vallaban, how you do some of your corrective forms of, or modifications of exercise?
Yeah, when it comes to sports, right, squat is the basics. Athletic position, we call it. So the basic athletic position, whether it is a basketball or a volleyball or a cricket, the squat basics is the one. And if it is going to be with any trainer, squat is one of the very important exercises. And one thing which I always never miss is a squat mobility test in my clinic. Probably can start from the first, please. So the squat mobility test is done very close to the wall with the regular squat position. The first is the side view. Okay, you can see the guy who is not able to complete the squat mobility test first. So in this test, we can start from screening from the ankle till the top, from the latissimus dorsi to the ankle, and his tibial torsion, ankle dorsiflexion, pelvic shift, and everything. The other guy on the posterior side, he was able to complete the squat mobility test. And this is the comparison of both the things on both the sideways and posterior view, and which is an ideal, which they call it, and then the other guy is still struggling to perform a squat mobility test, and probably the other guy needs a little bit of correction, so it's a little process, as everyone says. So we put him into a sissy squat unit and put him into a counterbalance position to slowly put into position. As this Ramakrishnan sir says, like sometimes it's isometric and time under tension, counterbalance, and all the structures as a kinetic chain we need to work. Concentric, eccentric, concentric to eccentric switchover, isometric, time under tension, pre-fatigue, post-fatigues, and everything to work on it. Last, when I can still it out. So in the first squat mobility and the white shirt pandradhukum, few correction key points kodutadukku apparama last correction illa poduvanga. You can hold it here. So idhula squat position vandu konjam better varum.
So this particular squat correction, where the stability is taken over by the equipment,
external equipment.
But how good is that? Because when we want the internal stability component to work rather than the external.
Initially, it works in phase by phase by phase by phase. So sometimes we put under, now it is under control as he is in the early phases. Then we'll slowly shift into TRX, and then from TRX to counterbalance bands, and then to progress to box squat to the other next level squats.
Okay.
Progress.
Siddharth,
it's almost like 10 weeks plus.
Okay. So Siddharth, some clinical assessment. Do you check for any pelvic mobility or pelvic stability test for a back pain in sports or anything?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the basic things which we do. We always, I think my professors and their professors before has always told one joint above, one joint below. So we always, if you are going to examine, always we have to check the pelvis, we have to check the core, we have to check the thoracic mobility, we have to check the lower half also. So pelvic stability test, we do diaphragm activity. Yes, definitely. As Kannan sir had just said,
how breathing is important.
Yeah, breathing is quite important, and many athletes, especially young athletes, elite athletes is much more easier because they have already trained, and to break a cycle is quite difficult. So they have already an understanding of their breathing, but young athletes don't understand, and they have very poor diaphragmatic activity, and they don't understand patterns, and that is something which has to be trained as well. And definitely I do check for there is activation to activate check the exact activation, whether transversus and multifidus is just basically movements. We do drills and we see. I prefer always a pre and post, definitely videos, sessions, and qualitative movement. That is the key which I like to see, because that is something which I don't think many people watch, but qualitative movement in action, on field and off field, that helps me to get an idea as to what is wrong in him, because at the end I'm a biomechanics at heart.
See, important comment I'll add that when we are taking the pelvic stability, we are also looking at the quadratus lumborum. We are also looking at the latissimus dorsi, thoracolumbar fascia going to the opposite side. And we are looking at the biceps femoris going up to contact as sacrotuberous ligament, which and all we never bother. We thought biceps femoris ends at ischial tuberosity. No, it is going up to the sacrum and attached to that also. So when we are dealing with the coccydynia, we have to check for these things rather than check the coccyx bone.
Where it is
Nothing
paining.
happens in the coccyx bone. They can even do a coccydectomy and still have pain. Because the problem is coming from the soft tissue.
So the last one quickly, Mr. Ram. So if you are going to do a deadlift or, with the shoes, without the shoes.
I've had an endless discussion about this with my trainers, because I work with weightlifters and
So this is the last one, so we can make it a little quick.
Yeah, sure. See, when it comes to barefoot, the only added advantage I feel is that you have a sensory output in that, because you're not wearing any shoes. So your sensory output is much more higher. And the next thing is, the previous slide please. So if you look at it, there is more a torso lean and hip dominant. So when you're going a deadlift, so your hip is driven in any deadlift. You're tilting your hip. When you go down, barefoot, there's more distance. Okay, but when you go into an elevated heel, the torso angle, more upright torso angle, and your knee has got more bend towards it. So it again depends upon your choices, but the problem is why I usually don't support barefoot is there is no ankle stability happening in barefoot. So there is a high chances of injury happening in barefoot deadlifting or barefoot lifting. We had instances in the gym where we were working that people dropping the whole weight on their leg, and I had to pick up the pieces of their toes later on from the floor. So there's a safety basis apart. Sensory dominance is much more higher. Your center of gravity maintenance barefoot is much more better in barefoot. That is there. But if you are doing any high weight, you cannot have cushioned shoes. Okay, because when you are going downwards, you cannot expect the cushion to go down and create an instability over there. So the shoes, even though when you're wearing shoes, the surface has to be flatter with less cushioning and more. So that's why if you go to in the first slide, the differences in the soles of the shoes you will see. The regular gymming shoes have got more cushioning than hard sole and flat heel for deadlifts. And squats, you have a slightly elevated heel. Okay, that is the advantage because they are supposed to reinforce your activity, not try to create more hurdles. So that's the difference. Again, the last one, the last slide. Next slide. Yeah, this one. This is for internal knee rotation is greater for barefoot. So greater knee flexion, activation of rectus femoris is much more higher with shoes because of the elevated heel. Your calf is more activated. So those are advantage. Again, it comes to your goal. Personally, I'm not much a big fan of barefoot workout. But again, it got its benefit as well. That's what.
Until the book on Born to Run, no one bothered about running with bare feet. That book came out when everyone started to run because the Tarahumaras are running with the bare feet. The fellow who's quoted, the person who's quoted El Caballo says, when he had a public press meet, he said, I am comfortable with this. If you are comfortable with this, you take it.
So to end, I'm just quoting this, that, where do you think the core stability is to be incorporated primarily? I feel it's in the kids. Because these days we find a lot of the kids cannot just get up into a flexion or they cannot come up. So that is something what we need to check, that it has to be incorporated right from the young age.
Without doubt, because the physical education teacher is the main person who can come into contact with the kindergarten, the primary school, and then the schools above. So the evaluations and whatever that need to be done, actually there should be a specialization as physical education department for the kindergarten or the primary school, where they would have identified and helped. Because no one else is going to go there and do it. It's on a day-to-day basis, the correction is not even possible. They are the best people to do.
So thank you very much. So the understanding is core is part of the kinetic chain, and the kinetic chain as such is going to be a functional one. So only thing is we need to understand the chains better, go a little more deeper in understanding so that our outputs can still be better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
One small point I would like to add is, yesterday we discussed about periodization. Please make sure this kinetic chain alignment conditioning should be a part of your periodization, initial preparatory phase. That is very important. Thank you.